Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is MIKKEL Thorpe, and this is the Expat Money Show. Today's guest is the owner of Isales Solution, a company that helps sales leaders and business owners build effective sales systems so they can focus on growing their organization. Originally from the United States, he moved to the Dominican Republic in the summer of 2017 and has been working fully remote for the last 5 years. Please welcome to the show my very good friend, Matthew Isales. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing good, Mikkel. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited to be able to spend the next hour or so talking, just learning a little bit more about what it is to work remote and be able to live abroad.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you and I have been friends for what, 2 or 3 years now. And actually, you're an expat. I don't know why I haven't had you on the show up until this moment, but let's remedy that. Why don't we kind of start off with your backstory? How did you get into sales and start building your business? How did you end up in Dominican Republic? I want to hear it all.
Yeah, good. So that sounds good. So, everything kind of flows together. The reason why I do what I do, I work remote, is because I moved abroad, right? And I feel like a lot of expats, they move abroad specifically because they want to improve their financial situation. They know cost of living is less elsewhere. And that was definitely a consideration for me. But for me, it was actually just because, my wife, right? So my wife is Dominican. Back in 2015, I studied abroad. I took a semester abroad in the Dominican Republic. I went to University of South Carolina for undergrad, and my sophomore year in the spring semester, 2015, is when I got to study and I chose the Dominican Republic. Right. So I chose the Dominican Republic because my dad's side of the family is from Puerto Rico. So it's the next island over, and it allowed me to experience a lot of the same culture I was somewhat familiar with, while still having that study abroad experience. So I studied abroad, and while I was there for the semester, I met my wife. She was also a student at the same university I was studying abroad, and she's a doctor, right? So we met 2015. We started dating pretty soon after, and we got engaged 2015 as well, right? So I already knew from that point that I was most likely moving down there. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I had actually studied international relations and Spanish literature for undergrad, but I knew that I could be more flexible than my wife's career, where she was studying to be a doctor in the Dominican Republic. And if you're a doctor in the Dominican Republic, it's not easy to transition to the United States unless you pass the steps, the MLE, I think it's called. You take those tests and you start your residency again, right? So I knew that I was going to be moving down there, and that happened 2 years later when I graduated from university in 2017, and that's when I made the transition down to the Dominican Republic.
Right? So you actually went back to the States for a little bit, had like an interim period, and then did what, like long distance relationship, or were you like going down all the time, or how did that look?
Yeah. So it was a long distance relationship. Like I said, we met in 2015. We were engaged in 2015, and it was 2 years of us being engaged, long distance, right? Wow. But I was able to travel down. As a student, I was working some side jobs. I worked, at Chick-fil-A for a bit. I did some undergraduate research as well, which let me, come down and do some, research here. So that allowed me to visit, I'd say 3 to 4 times a year, and be able to visit for about a week at a time. So it was pretty good. It wasn't the most ideal situation. I wish that I could have been, closer for that time, because, having in a relationship long distance always inevitably puts some strain on the relationship, right? So 2 years of that, and then in 2017, I graduated. We got married, a couple months after, I moved down, and then we got married right away. So it was really a quick transition.
Yeah, no doubt. But I mean, when you know, I think that a lot of people will attest to that for sure. So then talk to me a little bit about the business side. How did you go from studying Spanish literature to now building a business and helping companies with CRMs and their sales process and their marketing process and all of these?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I came down, I actually had a buddy of mine, Andrew. He was also doing some work in the DR. I actually went to high school with him. He, and we ended up, paths ended up crossing many years later. He set me up with a job in a call center. So the Dominican Republic is very well known for, business operation, business process, operations, BPOs. And he was able to set me up with somebody that he knew who ran a call center. So I started there. Working just as a normal outbound sales rep or telemarketing rep. And we were earning $600 per month, right?
Wow.
So, I just did some rough calculations. That's less than $4 an hour. So coming from the United States, where that's well below the minimum wage, that was kind of a shock to my system. Obviously, the cost of living is a lot less, but it was still, I knew that we had to tighten up our budget, right? Locally, that's not a terrible wage, right? If you get out of college and you start with that, even now as inflation has, made, the peso less, valuable than it was, it's still a decent salary out of college, right? But it put some constraints on us. So I was there for 6 months, and then we found out, because I got married right away once I moved down there, that my wife was pregnant. We're gonna have our first child.
Nice.
Right? Which was amazing news. And that's really what kicked us in gear and said, hold up, yes, the telemarketing isn't the best thing in the world, but it was a safe job there. I knew that I wouldn't lose my job working there, but I knew that we couldn't live off of that salary. My wife then and still is actually in her residency program. So while she's very advanced in her degree and her knowledge of medicine, she's still working off of a stipend. She's not getting, a standard, a doctor's salary, which, in the DR is less anyway. Right. So I knew at that point that one, I was going to have to take care of the child. I wanted to take care of the child, my daughter, my Abigail. And I knew that I had to make more money. So at that point, after 6 months, come the new year, 2018, that's when I made the transition and said, okay, I need to find my way out, figure out how I can make more money, and also take care of our daughter at the same time.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess this is probably an opportune time to kind of paint a picture of what you do for a living. And this is actually how we met, because I started engaging your services as a consultant for my business, which was hugely valuable to me. A completely new skill set that I did not know myself, and you handheld me through the entire thing. And now I think we've worked together 3, 4, 5 times, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where we get to the transition period. I was in telemarketing. I knew I hated it. That's not what I studied, and I didn't like it anyway. It's horrible being hung up to, on 100 times per day or whatever, right? So I knew that I had to make more money, but I didn't know how. But then, and I think this might happen with a lot of expats, is maybe they are early in their career, or maybe they work in a career where it doesn't transition too well for remote work, or it's just hard to find, clients in what they do, right? So when you get to this point, what you have to do is you have to figure out what are the skill sets and knowledge experiences that I have, and how can I monetize that? So that's what I did. When I was working in telemarketing, we worked with a very basic CRM, customer relationship management tool. And I didn't like calling, but I liked the system behind it that could automatically schedule follow-ups and stuff like that. I transitioned from working in the call center to doing telemarketing again, because that's what I knew at the time, for a private client, a sales coach in the United States. Right? I was with him for 6 months. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, because as that same client of mine, that sales coach, told me that none of his clients would hire me as a salesperson because I was not good at sales. Right. And he said it nicely. He was a very nice guy, and I do appreciate the time I had with him. But then that again led to another transition period, or, where I had to decide, what is it that I knew? At that point, I got introduced to Pipedrive, which is the main CRM that I now consult on. And again, I said, okay, I hate telemarketing. I need to get out of it, and I need to find work quickly. What do I know? I knew Pipedrive. I knew how to set it up, configure it, automate some things. So then the moment I got fired from that job, that's when I decided to just start putting my services online. Right. So I started with putting my services on Upwork, on Fiverr, stuff like that. And then slowly over time, I started to build a client base. And that's, how it went.
Well, I like that it's not just that you are a CRM specialist, which you are, especially now after years of experience, but also that you've picked specific CRMs that you will work in. So you are like the go-to guy for this type of software. So that will allow someone to charge a premium. And I think this is a general lesson for any new entrepreneur who's going out there and trying to build a business or trying to start something remote. Specialization is still so important. I mean, there is a comeback of the generalist and, can do a little bit of everything. I mean, there's still a big spot for the specialist who knows that specialized information, who can solve the problem instantly. And that's what I keep coming back to you for, is like, I could spend 50 hours trying to research this thing online, or I can give you a call, consult with you, and in 10 minutes it's done. And I can move on to building my business, which is what I really want to do. I don't want to spend time figuring out the software and things like that. Paying a premium from someone who knows how to do it, I'll do that all day long.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really a sliding scale, right? When you start out, you're just trying to figure out how you can make money and survive. You need definitely to be a generalist, right? You need to say, okay, I would take tasks on any type of CRM. If somebody said, oh, I need help with Pipedrive, great. I need help with HubSpot, Zoho, SalesMate, any of those CRMs, if somebody said it, I said, okay, I know the basics of what a CRM does and how it should function. I can learn really quickly on the job to get it done, right? And so you start out as a generalist, but then once you see, okay, I'm getting a lot of clients for Pipedrive, people come back to me a lot for Pipedrive, I know then that I can niche down. I don't have to worry about the flow of clients I have. And then that's where as well, where you can also start to charge more, right? I think that the two biggest lessons that I learned is, after you find something that sticks, niche down, specialize on that, and then start raising your rates, right? When I started out based on what I knew. I started out knowing that, as a telemarketer, I could charge $5 an hour. And that's what I did. Each client, I raised it up slowly, a couple of dollars each time. I finished a project, I raised my rates a little bit. And that's good at first, especially when you're trying to get over the fear of clients kind of rejecting you because of price. And that has a lot to do with psychology of you think of, oh, would I pay that? When really your clients are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They can pay for it. They can pay for a lot more, right?
For sure.
So it's really actually when I got a mentor of mine, he really pushed me to push up my prices, right? To go from $15 to $25 to $50 to $75 up to $100 now, right? And that's because when you become specialized, you can charge that rate because it saves the client a bunch of time.
Absolutely. And those are great lessons for anyone who is looking to move overseas and start a new remote career. Now, I want to pivot a little bit. I want to actually focus on what is a CRM, and say that we have like professionals, lawyers, doctors, accountants, new business owners who do not have a CRM set up in their business. Maybe you can kind of explain more about what a CRM does, how it helps you, why it's so valuable, and why someone might want to put it into their business.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. So there's a couple of different CRMs out there, but they typically fall into two main categories, right? You can have a marketing CRM and you can have a sales CRM, right? So the side that I focus on is more sales CRMs, right? That's what Pipedrive does. But basically, it's a tool for you to generate outbound or inbound sales. Outbound meaning that you're trying to go out and get them. Inbound meaning that they're coming to you, they're filling out web forms, something like that. Log all that information, all those potential sales opportunities in one place, and then pursue them efficiently and effectively through emailing, texting, calling, and all of that information can be logged in the system, right? So, a lot of small businesses, maybe the accountants, the lawyers, I've worked with a lot of people like that. They might start out working in a Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet, right? So this is the evolved version of that, where all of that information is there. It functions as a Rolodex, but much more than that. You can define a sales process, a repeatable process, and then you can execute on it based on the kind of the configuration that you set up. in your system.
Well, I know with a lot of the people that I've worked with, like I mentioned, lawyers and accountants, I mean, that is people who I work with on a lot of the occasions with my private clients. And it's interesting when I see their business and I start making these relationships with them, how they have their sales process set up, or really it should be more lack of sales process. Because I mean, it's like if something is at the top of their inbox, then they'll get to it. And if it's not, well, then it's gone. If someone makes an inquiry and you don't get a response on the very first try, then that lead is just dead to them. They just move on to the next one. So I think it's really interesting for a lot of these types of professions to take their business to the next level. I think it is just an absolute logical step to keep you organized and just to keep you sane on your business by having these systems in place.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the biggest problem that, the clients that have had is they just haven't defined the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And typically that's what the first meeting with my clients is, okay, how do you get new sales opportunities or leads, right? And then it's just a series of, okay, what next? What has to happen next? And you slowly start to define the system. If you define the system, you make sure that more of those sales opportunities don't fall through the cracks, right? Just because you forgot to send a follow-up message, right? Or just because you didn't send them something you said that you'd send them. And you also have the opportunity to follow up with leads that maybe were lost at the time just because they weren't ready to move on. So it really does a great job at increasing sales and really allowing you to see what is the health of your pipeline, right? Which is the end of the sales process, and even forecast, right? And say, okay, right now I have $15,000 in my pipeline, and my win percentage across the pipeline is 70%. I know hopefully that within the next month I might be able to close 10,000 or something like that, right? So yes, it is a very valuable tool for small businesses.
Well, and I would also imagine that you can start to define things. If I get this amount of leads in, I'm going to convert them to this step, which means that I will engage, or this amount of people will engage me, which will equal this much dollars. So it's kind of a formula, X equals Y equals. And so if you can increase the traffic on the front end, then you know what you're going to be able to predict coming out the back end. I think that this adds so much stability to the business instead of kind of guessing. As an entrepreneur, it's like, where is my money coming from? Who are my best people? What are they like? How do you communicate? It's really difficult to test any of these types of things if you're not tracking your metrics.
Yep. Yeah, it allows you to track metrics, and it also really allows you to identify those weak points, right? So if you set up a pipeline and you're able to report on the stage conversion, right, or win rates or stuff like that, you can say, okay, I have 5 steps in my process. A lead comes in, we schedule a discovery call. After the discovery call, we send them a contract, and then they sign the contract and we begin work, right? Well, if you see that the conversion rate from the first stage when they send in an inquiry to the second stage where you book a meeting is 50%, you're losing 50% of opportunities, then that gives you an understanding of, oh, okay, this is a part where we can increase the flow of clients to that next stage and eventually close more deals, right? So you might be able to pinpoint and say, well, maybe it's taking us too long to respond to inquiries, right? Response time is very important, especially for some industries more than others, in getting clients, because people continue shopping online, continue looking at other websites. And if you don't respond to them quickly, they could go to somebody else, right? Maybe your meeting scheduling process isn't straightforward. Maybe it's a long process, or it's just a lot of back and forth and clients just get fed up and move somewhere else, right? Maybe it's that people are submitting an inquiry because they think that you do a service that you don't, and you have to update your messaging in your marketing or on your website, right? So having a clearly defined process allows you to forecast really well, understand your conversion rates, and then start to pinpoint where you're able to improve the process and how.
That makes sense. So is a CRM system a static thing that you're going to be setting up once and then it's a set it and forget it? Or is this more of like an organic, living, breathing piece of software which will grow and adapt with you?
Definitely, it's a living, breathing software that you're supposed to spend every day in, right? Now, it depends what type of sales that you're doing. Some people are, in the field, as it's called, and the visiting businesses, they're traveling a lot. So maybe they're just updating things on the phone for a CRM mobile app or something like that. But if you're working from your computer, your CRM should be the hub of all sales communications and your business. You start your day in the CRM and you end your day in the CRM, making sure that you are keeping things up to date, moving things along the pipeline, communicating and following up with clients that you need to do so with. And it's really the central piece of the sales part of your organization.
Okay, brilliant. So then explain to me, like, what are some of the challenges? Because I've seen many times CRMs get set up and then the people don't use them, or they revert back to the spreadsheet and these types of documents because I don't know why, actually. I'm not sure why. What are some of like the most common things that you've seen when working with clients that kind of hold them back from utilizing the full potential of these?
Yep. So I'd say it comes down to a couple of factors. The first factor is not investing the time to learn the tool. Right?
Okay.
Now, some CRMs are easier to use than others. I chose Pipedrive because it's one of the easiest and most intuitive to use. But any system, any app takes a while to figure out, right? Even if somebody tries to log into Facebook or Instagram or anything like that for the first time, if you don't know how to navigate it, then it's too much, right? So you need to make sure, whether you're alone or with a team, that you invest the time to set it up properly at first, right? That anyone who will be involved in managing the CRM has a voice in how it's going to be set up. And then two, that you have proper training afterwards and proper rules about how things should be done. Because, I have set up systems for clients where they say, okay, I need this, 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 and done. After that first meeting, they have, poor communication with me, even though I keep on reaching out. I set up the system, and then 6 months later, somebody from the team reaches out and say, hey, this system's not working. And well, it's because they never learned how to use it properly. Right. So I would say that's one thing, is you got to make sure that you have a good onboarding process, making sure your team uses it, and that people are accountable to the system. Right. So if everything's working properly after a while of using the system, you should have good metrics and reports to go off of. Right. So you can have a weekly or monthly meeting, depending on what type of sales that you do, and with your team member, and say, hey, it looks like you only completed 75 calls this month. That's a bit low. What's going on? And then they say, well, either they have been slacking off or they're just not logging it. And then that's a problem of, again, they need to make sure they adapt the tool. Right. So proper onboarding and training is one thing. Another big issue that I run into as well is the balance between systemizing and automating. Right. And I say this because I have some clients that sell lower level products or services that might be a few $100 or a few $1,000. Those are lower ticket items, and it's when the product isn't that valuable and it's a little bit more of a transactional sale. Yeah, you can automate a lot. But when you get into the point where you're selling things worth tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or millions of dollars, your focus needs to be on systemizing, making it as easy as possible to follow, a specific sales plan without automating and losing that personal touch. Right? I mention this because I've had some clients or seen some people who want to automate everything. And when the automations don't work as they expected, or they don't know how to manage the automation, so automated emails go out when they shouldn't, and it's a mess, that forces some people to say, oh no, forget about it, I'm just going to go back to the spreadsheet. Right. So it's understanding also what, and it depends on the CRM, but what a CRM can do and what it can't do and what it should do for you.
Mhm.
If you don't align that, correctly, then you're much more likely to just go back to the spreadsheet.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for your first point, I kind of thinking back now, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago when I first tried to get into CRMs, downloading, a 14-day free trial and then looking at 900 different buttons and functions and features and things and just being completely overwhelmed, kind of staring at it or trying to goof around with it for an hour or two and then just being like, all right, this is too much and abandoning it. So I think that is such a strength when working with you because I mean, we didn't start our calls by like you going, okay, here's the CRM and this is what this button does and this is what this button does. We started in a Google document. It's like, okay, define your sales process. All right, what happens next? So how do you talk to people? How do you want to interact? What are the things you're looking for? You mentioned mobile. Are you going to be using it when you're out on the road? Do you need it to be, have a special application for that? All of these types of things. So working with you saved me a ton because I didn't get overwhelmed. I was actually like really gentle and easy. And then when I actually did jump into the CRM, 3 weeks later or something like that, you had either removed a lot of the functions and features that did not speak to my business and installed and fleshed out the ones that were important to my business. So that is like so massively valuable because you get this, I don't know, like what do they call it? Like deer in the headlights type of reaction with these pieces of software. And it can be so overwhelming. And I would consider myself like a very advanced and, not just very smart, but I mean, very, 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 very in tune with technology, how software works. I probably use about 50 different pieces of software for my business at any one time. I know how it functions. I'm able to adapt extremely quickly. And even for me, this was way too much. So after trying several times to do it on my own, working with a professional was a no-brainer for me, an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah. And, if we stick to the topic, but move to a kind of different theme here, talking about working with professionals, I kind of have a anecdote for when I moved to the DR, right? So a good story is when I first moved here, obviously I knew I'm here to stay in the DR because this is where my wife's career set up. We have a family now. And I knew that we're going to stay here. So I had, apply to make sure I have the residency visa, not just the tourist visa, stuff like that. It was the process for me getting the residency visa wasn't that complicated, but I just didn't know what I was doing. And that brought a lot of frustration, a lot of, unnecessary anger at the government saying it's taking too long. Where really any government around the world is going to take a long time. And I just wasn't informed about the process, how it would work, how long it would take. Right. So I find that, especially when, you have a little bit of money and which means that you have a little bit more flexibility, is consider working with professionals that are highly specialized in a certain area, because that can make your life a whole of a heck lot easier.
Yes, absolutely. I see it on a very regular time with my business over and over and over again. People will try to do things that they should probably not do themselves because they think it's going to save them money. Actually, I've seen it with Panama. I mean, I've helped so many people move down here to Panama and they decide that they want to do the residency process themselves. And 2 years later, and they're still trying to work through it and they can't figure things out. And I'm like, I could have sorted that out for you in 2 months or 3 months. We would have had you your residency. You would be on your way to citizenship. And yeah, it's a couple of $1,000s on the front end, but then you sorted, that it's going to be okay. You try to save $1,000 or $500 or something. And it's like, it's ridiculous. I mean, anytime that you can shortcut time and pay people for their experience, I mean, I do that, as I said earlier, all day long.
Yeah. When you get a lot of professions, and I know, for example, when a lot of salespeople get into the profession of sales, one thing that comes up in a lot of sales training books and everything is defining what the value of your time is. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you make, I don't know, $48,000 a year, and you can break that down to say, okay, that means on average, in an 8-hour workday, my 1 hour is worth this much time. Then that makes it easy to decide, how much time will I, most likely have to spend on getting my residency or whatever it is? And will that cost me more or less money than just paying somebody to do it who knows the process and can do it quicker?
Mhm. Well, and then that's a good segue because I think that CRMs are more than anything a huge time saver. If I had to track everything manually that a CRM does, oh my God, I would never get any other work done. So talk to me a little bit about the advantages for this. Like on the time front, what does that look like?
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways that you can save time with the CRM, right? First thing is, you know, automating some things like tracking when new opportunities come into your system, right? And updating them based on, different triggers that you can find along the process. So for example, if somebody, fills out a form on the website, it's automatically in the system. You can automate that. If you can set up autoresponders. So once they fill out a form, you can send them an email right away and say, hey, thanks for the follow-up. We'll be right with you in, 24 hours or whatever it is. In the meantime, you can fill out the survey for us to give us more information, or you can, sign up for a time to book a call, something like that. Also, it helps to track your communications a lot better, right? Almost every CRM nowadays can be synced with your email so that you're able to see all of your notes, all of your past activities, meetings, everything, all of your calls, and all of your email communications in one, client profile. And that really helps you to be able to make quick decisions on stuff, right? Also, CRMs have the ability to track data points, right? So it might be answers that your client has given you throughout the process, right? And that might help you decide quicker whether somebody's qualified or not qualified for your services,
Mhm, mhm.
right? And then on the back end, right? A CRM is great, but it can't do everything, right? So CRM is great for getting sales a lot of times, but if you might have another system for managing projects, managing tasks, right? Like Asana, ClickUp, Trello, something like that. And the standard way of doing it is to manually enter all the data into the new system. Again, you're able to automate that, push information directly from one CRM to another tool. So there's, in terms of tracking communications, automating some communications with the client, and also automating kind of internal processes, a CRM is great to do that.
Okay. So, well, we've covered, what does a CRM do? Who is it for? What does it not do? What are some of the problems and the challenges that people have had? How it's going to save you time. I ask you all of these questions because I really want to show how this can really open up things for people who want to be expats, who want to work remote, or even be a digital nomad, because all of these things really free you up to be able to build your business and not be stuck to one location, because that's really what it's all about. That's why we want to be expats. That's why we want to travel the world, is so that our income, so our life is not just stuck in one place. We actually have the freedom to move around. And I think that a CRM is a valuable part of that. If that is your goal, then a CRM system could really assist you. I also think that it allows you to, instead of having a large team or two or three people, it allows you to have software that deals with these things yourself. So in the same way that people normally have a secretary or an assistant or an executive assistant, these types of things, a lot of CRMs, autoresponders, calendar apps, these types of things replace this. So, I run a business with a very, very small team, but with a massive amount of software, which means I don't need to be trying to manage people as I'm 6 months in Brazil and a month in Colombia and a couple months in Panama and traveling around the world. All of these things get done, and they get done correctly, and they get done 24 hours a day, even while I'm sleeping, even while I'm on a different time zone, even while I'm out having dinner with my family and enjoying my life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Again, it just all comes back to being able to define a specific process and then being able to execute it a lot better, have a lot better understanding of what's going on in your business, right? Now, you might not need a CRM, for example, if you have a Shopify website or something like that. If that's the type of digital nomad you are, you don't need a full-fledged CRM. A lot of that's taken care of Shopify itself, or other tools like that. But if you are, say, and I expect maybe a lot of your listeners are people who are pretty advanced in their careers already. They are a professional and they are an expert in something already, right? So you might be offering consulting services, which now, especially after the whole thing with the pandemic has passed, everyone is working remote anyway, right? So it's fine to take consultation calls on Zoom, right? And to be able to track that and figure out how you can grow your business off of that, the CRM is really good at that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so before we get into the Dominican Republic, because I do want to save some time for that, because I'm super curious and I want to pick your brain about the island and everything like that. Just to wrap up the CRM side, if people are interested in CRMs, if they want to learn more, if they want to get a hold of you on that side, where can we send them?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking about that. The best and easiest way to reach out to me is just on my website. So that's www.isalessolutions.com. And that's just, my last name, Isales, and then solutions. So pretty easy to find. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from some of you.
Okay, so normally I would wrap up the conversation here, but as I said, I want to save some time for Dominican Republic, but I wanted to make sure that you got a chance to put in your website there, because we've just wrapped up talking about the CRM systems. Okay, Dominican Republic, what is it like? Tell me about life there. What is life like as an expat? How are the people? All of it. I want to hear the whole thing.
Yeah, of course. So I love living in the Dominican Republic, not just because now my family's here, but I think there's just so many advantages of living in the DR, especially coming from the United States. I get to live abroad and have a whole different experience, but it's one of the closest countries to get to from the United States, right? So, my parents were, for example, upset that I moved abroad because they wanted me close, and that's completely understandable. But in reality, I'm actually much closer to my parents in the Washington D.C. area than they are to my other brother who's in California, right? So you have a whole different experience of living abroad while still being close enough to the United States if there's ever an emergency that you had to go back and see family or anything like that, right? Second thing is cost of living. Right now, we live pretty comfortably. I don't think we live lavishly at all, but we live comfortably, and we live in an apartment right now that we're renting for less than $300 per month.
Wow!
Right? So
how many bedrooms?
3 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Nice. So it's in a pretty good area, not the best area, but it's in a decent, safe area. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and it's great. And I converted what would be the service closet, as a lot of Latin American homes and apartments have, converted that into my little office, right? Mm-hmm. So it's spacious, it's comfortable, and we pay less than $300 a month in rent, right? In addition to that, food bill, it depends wherever what you order and everything. There's a lot of agricultural stuff here that's grown right on the island, so you could spend very little money on food if you wanted, $100 or much less per month for an entire family. Or, if depending on what you get, whether you like some of the food that's imported, it could be close to what you might expect also in the United States. I think we spend on average probably about, for a family of 4, probably about $400 per month. Right. So again, wow, it's not that much, especially compared to some
cheaper than Panama. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I assume Panama has a lot of imported food. Is that correct?
I mean, well, we grow a lot of the food here, but I don't know, maybe we just have expensive taste and we're always cooking Thai food or Japanese, or, so everything is imported. We get our meats from, Argentina or Brazil or something like that. But I mean, if it's local fruits and vegetables, yeah, it's very affordable here, or eggs or fish or these types of things. But it's the specialized ingredients that you can go a little bit crazy on.
Yeah. And same thing here. I mean, that can happen here, but it's easy enough to eat, completely locally and not, break the bank at all. Right. So, we've covered rent can be pretty cheap. food can be pretty cheap, and I like the style of food here. Like a lot of Latin America, Central American food. It's a lot of plantains, a lot of rice and beans, chicken, pork, beef, stuff like that. So I like it all, and I like the style of cooking here. I do a lot of cooking myself. I love to cook in my own style, and then in the local cooking style as well. Yeah, just some other things I guess that are very important I want to mention is like I just love how diverse the geography of the Dominican Republic is. So first things first, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are, know a lot about geography, but Dominican Republic shares the island of Hispaniola with Haiti, right? So it's a big island. The Dominican Republic covers about 2/3 of the island, I'm pretty sure. And it not only has some of the best beaches in the world, but also has some pretty, spectacular mountains as well. When you think of the Dominican Republic, a lot of people think of just Punta Cana, which is an amazing beach. It has a lot more than that. I mean, you have the tallest peak in the Caribbean, and it's 10,000 feet high, right? So
Wow.
you have some decent sized mountains, and that's what I love is you have the tropical near the beaches. You have some high mountains. I had a good friend of mine who's visited the Dominican Republic a couple times now and also visited Hawaii. And he's like, when he first came, he was like, wow, Matt, this is the Hawaii of the Caribbean, because it does have, the tall mountains and the beautiful beaches. Right. So yeah, I mean, so it's affordable. The geography is awesome. Another thing that you can't, ignore is also safety, right? In general here, as opposed, I think, to some other countries in Latin America, if you're smart, you don't have too much to worry about safety, right? If you're in some other countries, I think there's a lot more, gang violence or drug violence or stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yes, like I'm sure there's tons of stuff goes on, but it doesn't get in the way of normal citizens just living their lives here, right? In general, I can't think of a time where I felt really that unsafe here at all, right? And whereas, I've been in cities in the United States where I felt much less safe. So honestly, in terms of safety, that's another big plus here. I feel safe. I feel happy here. And yeah.
So what's the locals like? Do you guys have a lot of local friends? Are they welcoming to an expat coming in, a foreigner coming into their country? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of expats here. I don't really interact with a lot of expats. Who I pretty much interact with at this point is just my wife's family, who's Dominican. But yeah, everyone is very welcoming to foreigners. There's a decent sized population of American expats. There's you'll find some European expats as well from Italy, Spain as well. Um, and yeah, so I mean, people are really friendly. I think Dominicans are always known to be very friendly, lively people, a lot of energy. It comes in through in the music and the food and everything. They're always very welcoming. Again, like in terms of feeling unsafe or uncomfortable, I haven't, because people are always just very welcoming. My wife and I, when we first started dating, we would just go around the country and try to find different waterfalls or hiking trails and everything. And we inevitably got lost a lot of times, or almost like running out of gas, or, off the beaten path and no way back. And, we find people to help give us directions, give us rides and everything without a problem. So a very warm and welcoming country as well.
So what about climate? Is it as hot and humid as everywhere else in the Caribbean, or do you get some cooler weather with the mountains and things like that there?
Yeah, so it depends where you are in the country, but in general, it's hot year round, right? Where the high is in the winter months might be mid 80s, and then in the summer months is 95, 100, pretty hot. Humidity is obviously way up there, especially near the coast. But if you go up to the mountains, yeah, it can get pretty cold, right? So if you're in we're in the valley, right? I live in Santiago, which is kind of like in the middle of the country between mountain ranges. Hot year round. The lows can probably be at night, might get down to a very comfortable, 70 degrees, right? Very
Mhm.
comfortable. And then, but if you go up into the mountains, then you can have highs in the 60s and lows not quite at freezing, but just a little bit above that.
Wow.
So yeah, so the climate changes a lot, which I like.
Okay. And then what would be some like recommendations of either cities to live in or neighborhoods or areas or places that people would want to check out? Either not so much as a tourist, because like, I mean, anyone can go online and just find a tourist area, but like cool places to live or cool areas to actually set up a base as an expat or a digital nomad.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. I love talking about the different places in the DR. So the first things first, I do want to state the obvious that the tourist part of the country is all the way to the east side, and that's where like stuff like Punta Cana is. I've talked to people who have been to Punta Cana but don't know that they've been to the Dominican Republic, right? So that's the tourist that's the tourist part of the country, right? But in terms of like the three biggest major cities, right? You have the capital, which is Santo Domingo. Any type of luxury or any store that you'd hope to find in the United States or anything else, you can probably find in Santo Domingo. I think that the greater metro area of Santo Domingo probably has, I was going to say 2 million, but it might be much more than that. It has a couple million people. It's a bigger city, comparatively, but it's a great place. You can get everything you need there. If you're working with visa stuff or residency stuff, you're always going to have to go to that capital city. I like it for its attractions. I don't like it because of it's a big city, and I don't like big city life, right? So that's the big city. It's in the south, right? Kind of south central. And then going up kind of like the main highway of the country, you get to the middle of the country, Santiago. That's where I live. With its greater metro area, I think it's about a million people, and I think that the more concentrated city part is probably around 500,000, right? So I see it like pretty comparable to like Baltimore, which is where I grew up in the United States, right? I love Santiago. It's a lot slower than the capital, but you still get almost everything you need here, right? And again, the price is obviously a lot cheaper living in Santiago than in the capital city.
Mhm.
And then if you keep on going up the highway, right? We started in the south at Santo Domingo. We got to the middle of the country in Santiago. You go up that same highway. I think it's just Highway 1. You get to Puerto Plata, right? Somewhat of a touristy place. Some cruise ships will come in, but also a lot of local people live there as well. It's probably has 250,000 people more or less. But don't you have to fact check me there, but it's decently big as well, has some of the decent amenities, and you're on the beach, right? So those are the three big main cities that you need to know. Now, in terms of the places that are my favorite to go, I love going to the Eastern Peninsula, right? You have Punta Cana a little bit farther south, and then you see like a little peninsula up top called Samana, right? And that is an amazing peninsula that is slightly touristy, but not nearly to the level as Punta Cana. Amazing, laid back, some of the best beaches in the world, and you can find amazing places right on the beach. Pretty cheap. So I love Samana and Las Terrenas. That's actually the area where my wife and I went to our honeymoon, because they have this cool treehouse village where it's a hotel, and the lily treehouse is in the middle of the forest, in mountainous forest, and it's amazing. Samana and Las Terrenas is my favorite place to go for the beach and for kind of mountainy beach kind of type of area. But then you want to go back to the center of the country for like the straight mountain experience, where you're up 6,000 feet surrounded by these amazing peaks and valleys. There's two places that are really cool. Jarabacoa, it's a little bit more developed. The road to get there is a little bit easier, but again, you have so many people who, the richer people will have the second homes there, and it's just an amazing place, just amazing views, but it still has good infrastructure. A place that's a little bit farther away, but is like right where those tallest peaks are, hitting 8, 9, 10,000 feet, is Constanza, which is also known as one of the most fertile places, right? You get great coffee up there, great, fruits and vegetables and flowers that come from that area. And you actually have a history of immigrants from from different cultures like Japan, China, and then Spanish. That they have all these different kind of groupings up there of people who historically moved up there. So those are my favorite parts. Amazing beaches, amazing mountains. To get from one extreme corner to the other might be like 12 hours of the country. If you
Okay.
went all the way from the northwest to the southeast, might be a little bit less, maybe 8. But going, for example, from Puerto Plata on the north coast down to Santo Domingo on the south coast, that would be about maybe about 4.5 hours. Depends how safely you drive, but around that time. So it's a big country. For being an island, it's a big and beautiful country.
Amazing. I'm thinking now already about renting a car and then trying to circumvent the whole island or something like that, or drive the whole thing. That'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I love this place. When I was a student, I got to camp on the southern part of the island, which is a lot more nature reserve, right to the southwest. Got to camp right on the beach, and it has everything that you want. So highly recommend that people come to visit. And even if people want to live here, I think it's a great place to live.
Amazing. Well, I know that Copa does direct flights to DR, so maybe I'll come visit you at some point. Bring the kids over, bring the wife over, and we'll do a big family vacation or something together.
Yeah, the invitation is open for you guys.
Nice one. Thank you very much, my friend. It was super interesting. I love learning from you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with my audience. If they want to get a hold of you, if they want to find out more about what you do, where can we send them?
You can send them just to my website, www.isalessolutions.com. And I'll be happy to work with anyone listening to this podcast. And again, MIKKEL, thank you so much for having me on. This was a great conversation. I love talking about the Dominican Republic, and I love talking about what I do.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.